I would like to call the Town of Belgrade Board of Select Persons December 7, 2021 meeting to order. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll take a motion to open the meeting.
So be it.
And they moved and seconded. All those in favor, Rick?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses. We are in order. All right, so the meeting is devoted to public comment, and that is the time in our meeting where if you have something you'd like to bring to the select board's attention that will not be covered on this evening agenda, now is your time. Bruce?
My biggest thing is, of course, you and Dan, I'm sure the other board members probably are notified. The last board meeting you guys had, DOT was here to discuss the municipal water system. And of course, we all have concerns of it. And after seeing, which I've known has been going on for years, the poor housekeeping of DOT with salt, carelessness, dumping salt over, in the yard, not cleaning it out, dumping the brine mixture. I'm just a little worried with the town going in with no plan B. Because that could down the road cost us millions of dollars to come up with plan B. And, what I took out of that meeting is DOT is saying, once they get this, they're gonna pull out and leave responsibility to us, which I know we're gonna negotiate not to do that, but I strongly don't think we should sign into an agreement that's not gonna have DOT 50-50 throughout. Because they're still, as much salt as they're dumping in their own yard near the well that we're gonna use, it's gonna get contaminated regardless. There's no question in my mind. And I just wanted it public, be on public record, and that's my opinion on it. I think we really need to do some homework.
Appreciate that.
So Melanie Max Stokoe also has his hand raised.
All right, Mac, you're up.
I do not have anything related to what Bruce just talked about. It's a totally separate issue. I didn't know if you were calling on me because you're there, or are you moving on? I don't want to interject if you're still talking about that issue.
Nope, Bruce is shaking his head. He just wanted to be sure his voice was heard.
Okay.
So
So
now
what?
now you're up.
Okay. So I'm just wanted to speak briefly about last time I was there about the First Memorial. The select board was really in support of the idea, but the location was a bit not totally supported, and it was kind of controversial. And I just wanted to say that that's kind of been the position that we've discovered in the public, in our group. And I feel like it's kind of a symptom of a larger problem, which is that something like that memorial, the way it's designed, is ideal for public interaction. And the village has a village green where there's a lot of people walking around, and that's, there's like a green, that's its purpose. When you say something needs to go in the center of town, there is a geographic center of town, but there is no actual town center. And I think that I think we can all agree on that. When I've talked to people in our group and even beyond, just asking people in the public about this memorial, they all support it, but I've had people say, well, it could go in the cemetery, well, it could go at the town office, it could go at the library, it could go at Workman Field, well, it could go at, where's this new fire station? That's gonna be in the town. And even recently, somebody mentioned park. So when we say center of town, yes, I think we all agree center of town makes sense, but it's not saying that, because where we choose to be one piece. There is no single piece town center. And I guess related to that, I was just looking, I may have mentioned last time, or maybe it was just to the first memorials group, but the town library, 10 years ago, we had the opportunity to make that property kind of a central piece of town. But we didn't. The library is still there. And it's kind of interesting because you have the library and then you have Workman Field and BCS, but there's a fence in between, and you wouldn't necessarily know that those are all public properties. Like if the town were to take over the library and take that fence down, you would have this huge green space of public property, and it would look like a public center. And if you take that fence down for the library property, I don't know how far along we are in the fire station property purchasing discussions, or I don't even know what the fire station is going to look like size-wise. But if you take that fence down, there's a ton of green space between Workman Field and the library building, and even the edge of BCS's property. I could visualize the fire station going right there, and then the memorial could go there. And I mean, it could be a central green. I know that's kind of big picture, but I'm just saying, I really appreciate the support for the memorial, but it's difficult to, after I had that meeting and talked to you and said, okay, they support it, but they want it to go somewhere in the center. I'm just letting you know, fundraising is becoming very difficult because we don't have a specific location. And when I say, oh, somewhere in the town center, people say, great, where? And, there's like 5 or 6 options. And so I just don't, I don't know. I'm just letting you know, and also bringing up the idea of maybe the town considering taking over the library to see if we might create a town center.
So Mac, I did get an email from Jay Bradshaw, and I've not had a chance to really kind of think it all through and give him a call back to talk to him about it.
Yeah.
There was something about Hayden Park.
Yeah, so, I guess, like I mentioned, I brought up Hayden Park as a possibility. So, which is good. They're all good, but they're all individual pieces, there is no center. So wherever we put it, it's just going to be just like the town office and the fire station and the library. It's like geographically, potentially all in the center, but individual pieces. And so there is no town center, if that makes sense.
It does. And there was something else in there from Jay about the fundraising and needing to come up with the $4,000 before the end of the year. And is that because there isn't a set location for it?
No, I had mentioned that when I came last time, that we needed to raise a certain amount to, before they would purchase the materials. And they are willing to hold that price through December 31st. But after that, they can't hold the price anymore because, as you know, materials and everything goes up. And I mean, it's not going to like double in price or anything, but I know the select board can't do anything about that, but we're just not going to be able to raise $4,000 by the end of the year. So the timeline is going to be pushed further back. And I'm not saying that's because there is no town center. I'm just saying, well, look, if we're slowing down in this thing anyway, why don't I raise this other issue and maybe we can try to tackle that as well and make it a bigger, nicer piece. But anyway, that's just a thought. I know, and I don't know how far you are in the fire station either, or how big that is. You know, I have no idea what that design is, or if or anything like that. It was just a thought, just like Jay had a thought about Hayden Park, you know, and I think an argument could be made that Hayden Park is a good location, just like an argument could be made that Workman Field is a good location. You know, I mean, there's multiple good arguments, but there is no perfect argument. Anyway.
And I think you want it to be somewhere where it can be enjoyed by a number of people.
Exactly.
And I don't often see more than one, sometimes two vehicles over at Hayden Park. It's
Exactly.
not as well populated, and the Workman Field area used to be the center of town. It's where the fireworks were held. When we had multiple Girl Scout troops, that was the town Christmas tree, and the troops and the townspeople would get together and sing Christmas carols and light the tree and do all of that. So that was much more of a town-centered center 10 or 15 years ago. So you raised some good points about possibly getting some stuff back on the radar, especially if the sentiment in town is that folks want things like this in the center of town. So I appreciate it. I don't know that I can solve anything tonight, but we can definitely get that on the agenda and talk about it and see if it's, you know, something that's feasible with a couple of different things in town if we pull them together. Are you still there, Mac? All right, I think your internet is unstable. Oh, I know. I was correct. All right, well, I'm gonna hope if Matt pops back in, we'll let him, if he has anything else to say to that. Otherwise, we're gonna move on to old business. Does anybody else have anything for public comment before I race right on by? All right, seeing none. First item under old business is the approval of the November 16, 2021 meeting minutes. We'll take a motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this? All right, seeing none. Ricky,
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Barbara.
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses. All right, and then we have the meeting minutes from the December 1.
Move that motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Let's open for discussion. All right, seeing none. Barbara,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Rick.
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses, those are approved. All right,
We're getting into new business.
now we have new business.
All right, before we get into this, I'm gonna make a motion because I want some discussion. And it's the the first thing for the appointment of the budget committee. I'm gonna make a motion for the appoint Nicholas Alexander. And if I get a second, then I can discuss it. I'll tell you why.
Why aren't we finishing the old business?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're correct.
There was was there old business?
Sorry, there is more old business. Sorry, discussion and consideration of a refund
Oh,
policy,
okay.
and then we'll go to new business.
Okay.
All right, so I'll take a motion to open that agenda item.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All right, that item is open for discussion. we've got the back-to-back on the photocopying is bugging my eyes out. And we have all these tabs back here, but none of them are with anything.
I'm sorry, you were just trying to save paper because like 180 pages.
Yeah, I get with the one in the middle.
That's why I missed that.
All right, so the town received requests from 2 citizens for refunds of payments made in March of 2020 to participate in the Recreation Department's yoga program. Program attendance records reflected one of the citizens had 1 unused session, the other has 3 or 4. The records related to that resident were not clear. The request raised the question of whether the town has a policy regarding refunds, and the town has 2 refund policies currently. The recreation facilities usage contract notes rental fees must be paid prior to an event, and that deposit will be refunded if the event is canceled at least 14 days prior to the event. The second is that voters approved a perpetuity article in 2017 to refund motor vehicle excise tax credits as permitted by state law. So at this point, we're at if the board wishes to consider a refund, and if so, what will our policy be?
I would like to know where the proof of the amount is.
So I actually asked if folks wanted that individually, that, like, if you requested it, we would give you a copy of that, but I didn't feel like when everyone's name and their information was on those attendance sheets, that it was right by the town to put all of that information in a packet and give it to anybody who wanted it.
Okay,
So,
so I would like to see it because I'm part of it.
yep, absolutely. Do we have a
I
copy?
can go to my office and print them off.
I can. Just a moment, because I believe I have it here. So. Do you want me, can I send it to your phone? Is that easy for you? Or do you want to look at it on my phone? Or do you want Anthony to print you a copy?
I'd like a copy. Carol, do you want a copy?
And everyone else on the board should have got a copy in the email.
Yeah.
Okay.
These are not the correct dates. These are not the correct dates. You got June here.
Those are the last attendance sheets that we have.
Well, these are not correct. Because I made my check out February 5th, 2020, and this is June and July and August.
Correct. My understanding is that those unused sessions continue to carry forward. And of course, we had a lapse of time where we had no yoga.
This is not right.
That-
This is not right.
I
This is
had my
ridiculous.
check out of this injury, we were on the court, so it was, anyway, I have my check at the house, I took with me.
Well, they have, I got my copy here. My copy was for February 5th,
Oh, this is
2020. And that is not correct. That is not correct. There's no proof. That does not work. Because it's closed down in March. And I made my check out for $72 on February 5th, which would be 6 weeks or more of class. That's 12 weeks.
Right.
So that is wrong. Why aren't there, that's not right.
Well, the second one is for up through October, so July, August, up through October. Yeah, so it's hard to know because there's no year on there. It's, yeah,
That's nothing.
August, and then
Why aren't there records before that? When it closed down, why aren't there records from that? You're the town manager, you should know how everything works in this town.
Well, I don't believe that's a realistic expectation.
I
A
don't,
store manager should know how to run every department in their store. Why shouldn't you know how to run all your departments?
Well, that's why we have the directors to run each of the departments. And so all I can tell you folks is that we went, we searched for the records. Those were the last records that we found.
If we're looking at a refund policy rather than dealing with specifics, which we don't seem to be able to resolve, could we maybe set up a subcommittee to look at a general refund policy moving forward? And then decide if that could be applicable to an unusual situation such as what happened during COVID?
well, and I think what we had done was we tabled this at the last meeting when we discussed it because we were waiting for the yoga attendance records.
Right, but apparently they're not adequate. So rather than taking time to solve a problem we can't solve, can we? If
Let's
there are a
just
couple of us that want to work on an overall policy, could we do that for a future meeting?
We have spent a lot of time on this so far. Why don't we refund their money and then we'll work on a policy further down the road? But to take care of this tonight, let's refund their money and move on. We're not talking a big amount of money. And
Is that your motion, Ricky?
yes, it is.
Okay, so the one that it's a question, if it's 3 or 4, do we just go for the 4?
Yes.
Okay, so what does that amount to? $40 for one and $10 for the other? Is that what we'd be refunding?
Yeah, I think the sessions were $10 a piece.
Well, if a check was written for $72, how many classes was that?
Well, it
supposed to cover?
says here on yoga, $50 for a 6-week session or a $10 drop-in rate.
That's for Thursday night. That's not for Wednesday morning. It's different.
What?
So,
The rate is different between the two
Yes.
times?
just one was longer.
Oh, okay.
It was $36 for 6 weeks if you paid in advance, and I paid 12 weeks in
Yeah,
advance.
that was for Wednesday,
That was for Wednesday.
and the Thursday class is the $50 class, so these are days, it says $50 at the top.
Yeah, see, I don't
So
go,
these
I
don't-
didn't go to
these
the
don't-
Thursday night class. That doesn't even involve me. My class is Monday morning.
Right.
And so Jane,
All right.
how many classes that you're
What's your
entitled to?
question?
I think that if it closed down the beginning of March, and I wrote my check on February 5th, I know that I went to at least 1 or 2 classes in February, but that, that should be somewhere, that the records should be somewhere. Because that doesn't even reflect my classes.
Well, we had a change in directors. So
Yeah, I understand that, but I wrote,
All right,
I think I
Carol,
need more than 2
Sorry.
classes.
Jane, excuse me for just a minute. Carol, how much was your check for?
My check was for $50.
All right, I'd like to make a motion that we refund $72, Jane, and 50, what was it, 50?
Do you want me to bring my
To
check
Carol.
to you?
If we could get a copy of the canceled check, that would probably be, because this is not a usual
Don't you already
policy.
have a motion from Ricky?
But we didn't have an amount in it. And did you have an amount in your motion, Ricky?
No,
No, I did not. I just, we had one last time they came up with, and I thought we were still on that one. There was one, what they requested the last time. So if we could
And
put
it
that, I'd
wasn't
be
a-
happy.
Wasn't an amount the last time because it was unsure how many classes were still owed. So that was what we were hoping to find out.
Well,
I believe they had numbers they wanted.
Well, so at this point, Ricky, it looks like we're gonna up the amount.
Let's
So
just,
there's
I'll go with your motion. I'll second that. Let's move on.
Okay, moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none. Dan,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes,
Carl,
yes,
Barbara?
Yes.
5 yeses. So the warrant for this evening's meeting is already done, so your checks will not actually go until our next warrant, which will be our next meeting in December. And once those are approved, the town will send you both a check. Okay,
Thank you.
and Carol, if you wouldn't mind, if you can
I'll bring
email
my
it or
check
something
tomorrow.
like that, it's perfect.
Thank you so much.
And do we have, Jane, do you have a copy of your
I
canceled
brought
check
it to
you
the
said?
town office already.
Okay,
A month ago.
perfect.
Oh,
All right, thank you, folks. Have a good night.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, so the second part of that is at a future meeting, if we want to put it on the whiteboard, we will set up time to figure out a
Yeah, I think
refund
the question
policy.
before the board really is, do you want a refund policy? And then that sort of gets the ball rolling from there.
There ought to be a policy. There ought to be a written policy.
Right.
Yeah.
And it
And-
and
and
it
the
may
policy
vary,
may
it
be there's
it
no
may
refund.
vary, it may vary department by department.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors to consider.
but if it's in
that-
writing somewhere, even if
Yeah,
it's
I
no,
mean,
then we can refer
When we
to it.
start looking at it, I mean, the easiest thing, whether it be for illness, if it's something like this that goes on, if you request it within that calendar year, we'll give you your money back. If it's outside the calendar year, I'm gonna say,
Well, and that was the issue here, was it was outside of the calendar
Right.
year. Do we go back to the instructor and get the money back from her?
but it sounds like from what I saw in the email, that she actually wasn't paid. If they didn't do the classes, she wasn't paid,
Right,
so.
Well, and I think we have to watch calendar year, because if someone makes a payment the middle of December, that's going to pay through till March. So I think you need to have a range within, well, I mean, I think
Yeah,
the
we'll work on
subcommittee
that.
to knock that out.
We'll come back more.
not talking a lot of money, so I'm not even sure we need a policy.
well, the problem is, Ricky, is if all those other people come back who then say, give me all my money back too. At some
Well-
point, we need that money, because that money was paid out.
There probably better be better track record of what people are doing. If they've come into the trainings and stuff like that, I think we'd be covered fine.
Yep, I think so too. We need more of an Excel spreadsheet. All right, so now we'll move on to new business.
Okay, back to my motion for the budget committee. I'm gonna make the motion to appoint Nicholas Alexander. And once I get a second, I can open a discussion. I'll explain why.
And I seconded it already.
So,
Yep, moved and seconded. It's open for discussion.
all right. The reason I'm making this motion is because the application came in before we came up with a written policy. It came in basically under our unwritten policy of how we used to do it. And when we adopted this policy on the 16th, the very next agenda item, we violated the policy because we accepted Sue Bradshaw's and appointed her without making her go through the 2-week thing and going back to the committee and have the committee come back and recommend it and everything else.
Well, you can't set a policy that night and enact it that night. It wasn't written yet. The meeting minutes were not approved until the following meeting.
Well, that's the reason I'm going with that. Because I mean, basically hers was acted on with the unwritten policy, and I feel that, Nicholas or anybody, if we've had somebody else, because we also got a couple of applications in for board parks and rec, and one of them doesn't have a date on it, so I'm not sure. These people could have grounds to go hire a lawyer.
Well,
Because they made
if they
their
were
act-
seriously gonna sue the town about that, that would be, A serious waste of money. I think there's gotta be more important things. You have Parks and Rec ones there?
Yeah, 'cause I've asked, I want a copy of every application when they come in from now on.
I got you, because I was like, I didn't see
So-
those in
so
here
the-
today.
So the Board of Parks and Recreation has had a sort of a procedure for reviewing all of the applications that come before it. And so we have submitted those applications, and there are 2 people.
Okay, and those came in though after we enacted the policy?
I don't recall, Dan, but it had not been to the Board of Parks and Recreation at that point. And so, in fact, it still hasn't. They're meeting Thursday night, and that's when they're going to review those applications.
That's fine, and that's under our new policy that was voted on, so. So anyway, so that's why I'm making the motion. You guys can do with it what you will.
All right, so it's moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on that one? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of Nicholas Alexander for the Budget Committee? Dan,
Yes,
Rick,
Yes.
Carol,
No,
Barbara,
No,
and I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna make a motion that we appoint Scott Ferguson to the position as recommended by the Budget Committee.
second,
Moved and seconded, that one is open for discussion. Is Scott here? There's Scott.
Yes, he's on the Zoom call.
Okay.
I'm here.
Hey, Scott.
Hi.
All right, so sometimes when folks get in the hot seat, we do ask why it is they'd like to be on the committee that they submitted an application for.
Well, you're asking me? Town resident. I've done finance most of my life. I'm currently an administrator, and I think I can help out with the budgeting process. I'm currently on the library board as the treasurer, and I've also come in and helped Nick understand governmental accounting. So there are other reasons, but I think those are the primary ones.
Is there any more discussion? Anybody have any questions? All right, seeing none, Barbara,
yes,
Carol,
yes,
Dan,
no,
Rick.
Nope.
Did you say no?
That was a no. Nothing personal.
Either way, I'm gonna say yes. So welcome aboard, Scott.
Thank you.
The next process, you'll have to come by the town office to be sworn in.
Okay, will do.
All right. Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, next up on new business, we have.
just a question on that, Melanie. So Scott would not stay as treasurer of the library, so that position would be open? He'd do both?
That's up to Scott. I mean, there's nothing that precludes someone from serving on more than one committee at a time. Bruce does it, Jack does it, and so, and George does it as well. So that will be up to Scott.
Yeah, so there isn't anything that says he needs to,
Okay.
there's only certain things, like if you get on the select board,
Yeah, I understand that.
then could be a conflict of interest. All right, so we have the consideration of the bottle box applications. So I'll take a motion to open that item. Moved and seconded. That item is open for discussion.
Melanie, I am the chair of church council, and as such, I signed the application for Union Church. So because my signature's on that, I think I should recuse myself from the discussion.
Will you monetarily benefit from the bottle boxes?
No, I will not monetarily benefit.
Then I would be comfortable with you going ahead and voting if the rest of
Okay,
the board
as long
thinks
as-
that's okay.
As long as everyone's comfortable with that.
Now, if we were dropping the bottles off at your house,
Yeah, that's a different story.
and if the bottle box said Carol Johnson.
Carol Johnson Party Fund.
Exactly, then I would have a little issue.
Okay,
All right, so we have spots for 3 bottle boxes in the policy. is set forth for 3 bottle boxes. We did not get a 4th bottle box application, correct?
Correct.
And if we do get a 4th bottle box location, we discussed doing the lottery thing, and then I think it was all kind of
After the first
cattywampus.
year, we're gonna bring up go back over the policy and refresh it if it needs to be refreshed.
So
this is good for a year, am I correct?
1 year.
1 year, okay.
and we normally would have this as, so the Transfer and Recycling Committee's recommendation are that these 3 applications for bottle boxes be approved by the select board, because that's the recommendation.
Correct.
So that's my motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Ricky?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes,
All right, 5 yeses. They're all in again. And as long as they keep them clean, we don't care. All right, next we have discussion and consideration of a request for proposals for a compactor container. Take a motion, open that item.
second,
Move, seconded, and thirded. That item is open for discussion. So here's the scoop on this. While everybody was out having way more fun than me, I got a phone call from the builder of the container boxes. And essentially, the 2 distributors for the boxes had contacted the manufacturer because they did not want to bid on the containers for 2 different reasons. One was that we had something in the original RFP that stated they had 6 weeks to get us the containers, and if it went outside of that, was it $100 a day?
Correct.
Correct.
And the second piece was there was a
Performance bond.
performance bond that they had not had in other RFPs. So essentially, it was like, we say you have O'Connor's and Charlie's, who are both trying to sell these trucks, and the customer goes to GM and says, listen, they're saying we have to have these 2 things in order to get these trucks, and we've never had to do these before, or with the $100 fine per day, with steel being hard to get and things like that, the manufacturer said, honestly, Melanie, we're probably gonna have them to you well before you're expecting them. But in case we get held up on something that's out of our control, their margin of profit is so tight as it is that they would both just refuse to put a bid in if we did not go back at the RFP.
So I think that was kind of a mistake, so kind of overread that part of it. But I think the performance bond and the fine, that's more for road paving, stuff like that, not for stuff being made. Because I know, like me, I would never bid on anything like that. No way.
Well, and I did say to the gentleman that I spoke to, I said, that's not something that's going to jump out at me when I'm reviewing an RFP, because I'm relying on, the folks that have more area of expertise and what they're looking for that. So I said, but I would know something on my own thing that would catch my eye. So this just got by us. So what I had left the gentleman with was that I talked to Ken and I talked to Anthony and I called Ricky, and did I call you that day? I don't know. I was calling everybody I could think of while I was at work. But anyhow, what we said was, I said, if one of them has already put a bid in, please have the other one put a bid in, because they're going to come in comparable, and I don't want one to have a bid in and get the bid
Right.
because the other one held theirs because of these issues. But if they both contacted the manufacturer and complained, I said, if you can reach out and ask them both to hold their bids, then we can review the policy. We can talk to the Transfer and Recycling Committee and see if we can put a new RFP out that they then will both bid on. So that's what we're looking at here tonight, is this new RFP going out that has removed those two troublesome hurdles. Is that, did I miss anything? No, okay. So they both held their bids and they're waiting for us, and then they'll put their bid right in. And what I got from them was that they were probably already gonna be starting for us, just waiting for the go. So does anybody have any questions about this, or can we go right ahead and vote on the new RFP? All right, seeing no questions. Ricky, what's your pleasure?
We haven't had a motion yet.
Oh, sorry,
I'll make a
make a
motion.
motion.
Second.
Second,
All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor of approving the new RFP? So Dan,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes,
Barbara,
Yes,
Carol.
yes.
All right, 5 of us say yes, let's move forward with the new RFP. Now I'll take a motion to put the RFP forward. In a second. What, to push out the RFP?
Oh, second, yes.
Okay. All right, moved and seconded. There's no,
and what is
no-
this for? What is this?
this is to put forward, so we
Send out the
approve the
RFP.
RFP and now we're gonna send it out.
Oh, okay, so that has to be two different steps.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right, Ricky,
yes.
Barbara,
yes.
Carol,
Yes,
Dan.
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses. Let's get us a container. And I think I'm at the end of that one. Okay, next up, we have discussion and consideration of proposed ordinances. The first is the subdivision ordinance rewrite. I'll take a motion, to open that item.
So moved.
second,
Right. That item is open. Like I'm supposed to, I always feel like I either do too many, like all those in favor, or not enough of them. But that item's open for discussion. You are on the hot seat, sir.
Great.
Never been there before.
Never. Would you like a couple bullet points to kind of chew on,
Do,
or?
is there anything so helpful if we read this, or do you?
Yeah, that was, I think so. That was, and I think maybe on the other side, we got the executive summary from Charles.
Yes.
That's really helpful.
So you want me to read the whole thing in?
Maybe.
Your poker face is terrible, by the way. All right, so attached are 2 ordinance changes approved by the planning board. The first is a rewrite of the town's subdivision ordinance, which was crafted in 1988. The document no longer complies in many regards with state law, necessitating a rewrite. Also attaches a memo from former Kennebec Valley Council Governance Planner who assisted the planning board in the rewrite. It details some of the most significant changes. So this is from Charles, is it Tiedemann?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, subject Belgrade subdivision ordinance update, summary of changes. This memo provides a summary to accompany the final draft of the Belgrade subdivision ordinance rewrite that the planning board has undergone alongside Kennebec Valley Council of Governments. In November of 2020, Charles provided the planning board with a draft of a new subdivision ordinance based off the model subdivision regulations for use by Maine planning boards. This model ordinance, written by the Southern Maine Regional Planning Commission with assistance from the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry's Municipal Planning Assistance Program, was created in 2006 to supplement the changes to Title 30-A MRSA Subchapter 4 subdivisions. Currently, the existing Belgrade subdivision ordinance separates subdivisions into 2 categories, major and minor. Minor subdivisions are currently defined as any subdivision containing no lots, dwelling units, or other subdivision units in which no street is proposed to be constructed. Major subdivisions are currently defined as any subdivision containing more than 6 lots, dwelling units, or other subdivision units, or any subdivision containing a proposed street. The planning board wanted to maintain the distinction between the 2 subdivisions in order to lower the burden on small developments. However, the proposed subdivision ordinance changes the definition of minor subdivisions. As written, minor subdivisions will be limited to residential subdivisions only, no more than 3 additional lots or dwelling units leading to a total of 4 lots. No new roads. Total area of subdivided lots no larger than 200,000 square feet. Major subdivisions as proposed will include all proposals not considered a minor subdivision. As for the application process, the proposed subdivision ordinance maintains separate application processes for minor and major subdivisions. However, all proposals will have the same sketch plan meeting and on-site inspection, final approval and filings, and revisions to approved plans standards. The designation of minor or major will be decided at the sketch plan meeting, allowing applicants to prepare for the respective preliminary plans. For the most part, the application requirements for both minor and major have remained the same. The planning board may require additional submissions. There was a word not in here.
Maybe from.
So I included the word from. So I just want to be sure before I say it that this was the intention. The planning board may require additional submission from minor subdivision applicants because the requirements aren't as burdensome. Therefore, some proposals may need additional information.
I would say that's correct.
Good word to add.
Conversely, major subdivisions applicants, and is it may or may not request a waiver for certain proposals because major subdivisions are subject to all requirements.
I would say they may require.
They may,
How is it may
Well,
ask for?
yes, may request a
May
waiver.
request.
Okay, so we'll leave that one. I left a little bit. Okay, Article 13, Performance and Design Standard is the bulk of the proposed subdivision ordinance. The existing Article 10, General Standards, lays out a minimum list of standard requirements based on old standards and resources. Article 13 of the proposed subdivision ordinance enhances the performance and design standards in Belgrade and brings them back in line with state statute. The proposed section includes updated references to state and federal resources for guidelines and requirements. Article 13 also includes a series of tables outlining the requirements for road design standards. Finally, the proposed subdivision ordinance includes an updated appeals section taken almost entirely from the existing Belgrade Appeals Board ordinance, which has been viewed and approved by the Appeals Board. Unfortunately, KV-COG drafted the proposed subdivision ordinance as a new document, so there is no way to track every specific change. The changes noted above are the most noticeable and important and reflect the critical conversations between KV-COG and the planning board. This process has been collaborative at every step, and we've reached a final document that reflects the values of Belgrade while following the requirements from the state.
Excellent.
Yeah.
May I just add just a little bit more?
No, no.
That's it.
That's the end.
And George, please feel free to jump in if I've overlooked something too. Since that document was given, that executive summary, we've had more discussions about what minor subdivisions are. So we revised that a little bit. So what was written there was accurate at the time, but since then we've revised it just a little bit. And I do want to note that we have received public input on this too, which was an important aspect going forward. So if you don't mind me just saying what we have in our latest version.
Yes.
That the
So in our 800 pages, it's not, we don't have the most up-to-date version?
No, this is it.
This is it, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So for minor subdivisions, let's see, will be limited to residential or non-commercial subdivisions only. No more than 3 additional lots or dwelling units, leading to a total of 4. No new roads, so that's still the same. And then this is the one thing that we did alter based on public input, which is total area of subdivided lots no larger than 7 acres, excluding the acreage remaining from the original parcel from which the subdivision is being created.
Pages that.
I'm sorry, that was on page 9.
Okay.
It still comes out the same way. And did I miss anything on minor?
No,
No.
no.
And I do want to underscore the importance of the work that was done to bring this up to state law.
There is a note in here on one of the pages, something about general election.
Yeah, so,
Has
so,
that been changed or?
so,
what's that?
Once the select board has approved this document, Dan, we're going to submit it January 1 to Bernstein Sure to do a legal review of under our new legal services contract. And so that's something that, a question that was raised during the discussion among the planning board is, it says that it can only be approved by a special or a town meeting of the voters. And so if we have a general election and we have local questions on that ballot, does that constitute a special election, a special town meeting? Do we need to specifically call a special town meeting? So it's really just a legal question, just to make sure we're covering our bases if we want to tie a local election to a state election. And so what will happen is once that legal review is completed, we are going to bring that back to you at your January 18th meeting to approve any changes that the attorney recommends.
Okay.
And speaking of that, so there is one other potential, well, there's one change that the planning board, after I sent out the packet, agreed upon, and that is on page 65. There is a reference at the bottom of the page to the horizon year. And so there was a lot of discussion about, well, what exactly does that mean? And so we went back to the DOT documents that are listed in paragraphs 1 and 2 on page 65. And we found that that definition that's in the comments there in those documents of what the horizon year is. And it was the consensus of the planning board that we go ahead and use that definition as opposed to the term horizon year, just because it gives more clarity.
It was a term, just so you know, we had not seen before. And so we didn't know how it applied. So getting the language from a standard definition was helpful.
Did you have something, Jack?
No, I had a question, but it's not to this point we discussed.
Okay. You're gonna flag me again?
Well, if I can ask it,
Absolutely.
is this ordinance, does this ordinance have anything to do with shoreline zoning, or is that a separate ordinance?
Separate.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm like, you just posed those questions right over there.
Plus the subdivision happens to be down in the shoreline zone. So
Then she'll apply.
Then you can't put one because you're too close to the lake. All right, so does anybody have any questions or comments on that? That's gonna come back to us in January. So do we approve moving this forward to the town attorney for
Yeah, so what we're
recommendations
seeking
or?
tonight is the select board's approval. And as I said, in January 1, we will submit it to the town attorney for a legal review.
I do have a question for Peter.
Yeah.
Peter, are all the planning board members okay with this?
Yes, Ricky, that's a good question, because one of the things that we did want to reconcile had to do in the minor subdivision, and we had several talking points there that we did. And then after doing that, that we had unanimous consensus that we were okay to go forward.
Thank you.
And if I'm sorry, go ahead, Rick.
No, I just said thank you.
Okay, well, and I wanted to also just sort of recognize the fact that the planning board did a lot of heavy lifting in getting this document. I mean, it's a 98-page document. There are a lot of complexities in it, and with KB Cog's assistance, I mean, they did yeoman's work while also attending to the other business that the planning board must attend to. So,
And having lives and jobs.
and lives and jobs. Hearty thank you to the planning board for their service on this.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was really good to have public input too, even if it was sometimes pointed, or if there was disagreement. It was really good to have that. So, and that resulted in some minor changes that we were able to bring forward.
Some minor changes to the minor.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so I make a motion that we approve the subdivision ordinance rewrite and put it forward to the town attorney after January 1st for an opinion and recommendations.
second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any further discussion on that one? Seeing none. Ricky?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses. Get that one moving. And Anthony, if you guys want, I mean, I don't have a problem with us hanging on to these and just, you know, if there's a way we can store them in the town office and just put them back in the, I don't even care if we leave it in my book and
Okay.
we stack the other stuff in front of it for now,
Okay.
just so that we don't have to do all that.
So just so you know, for the second item, the way I saved the PDF, it did not track the changes, so I put printed out copies on each of your desks
This is with the blue.
with the blue.
All right, so the next up is the Commercial Development Review Ordinance Amendment relating to phosphorus export standards. Take a motion to open that.
Second.
Moved and seconded, that item is open for discussion.
Do you want to read that paragraph?
Oh, heck no.
No,
Just
no.
kidding. Peter would love
It
to.
could be a nightmare. Could I just give you a quick overview?
Yeah, but just the paragraph, because
Oh,
we didn't read this,
yeah.
that second paragraph on
Into
the
the
memo
record.
from Anthony.
No.
Because first we did the other ordinance.
Okay, the second ordinance change would correct a problem with current phosphorus runoff standards in the Commercial Development Review Ordinance because they are outdated and based on a time when water quality in Belgrade's lakes was higher. The ordinance's current standards are less stringent than the state standards for Belgrade's lakes. This issue was brought to the board's attention by Brightside Marine's engineer. The amendment in essence requires that the town's phosphorus runoff standards mirror those established by the state of Maine. The Planning Board recommends by 6-0 December 2nd that the Board of Select Persons place each of these ordinance changes before the voters at the town meeting in March.
So the quick summary, if I could.
Absolutely.
So you don't have to worry about being a scientist on these things, was really to, rather than to have a snapshot in time of standards in the ordinance that would become outdated as soon as the science would catch up later, was to point to the experts that would have this, and that would be through DEP's things, and they're cited in here. So that was really I think the real genius move here, is to say, rather than have something that'll be outdated tomorrow, let's point to the resources and subject matter experts that do these things for a living, and then reference that. So it's really by reference that we're able to keep this probably going for quite some time.
Mhm.
So,
Good thinking.
That makes sense.
George?
Just to build on what Peter said, the same is true for the methodology used to estimate the amount of phosphorus running off of a certain particular development site. We, by virtue of this, we would standardize the protocols and we would rely on DEP's latest methodologies rather than the antiquated one that's in the ordinance now.
That makes sense.
So we're expecting our code enforcement officer to keep accurate records from this point forward.
I would say yes.
I'd say we might be retired.
I hated that. All right,
Isn't that one of the things from a comprehensive review?
hey, yes. But I was like, we listen, we were hearing you. Right, does there anybody have any questions or discussion? All right, seeing none. I make a motion that we put the Commercial Development Review Ordinance Amendment, and it's just the amendment that's going forward to March town meeting.
That's correct.
Yes, okay, so I'll make that motion.
And does this have to go to the lawyer first also?
It falls within our contract, so I'm planning on submitting it just so that. they can
Okay,
do
I
legal
will
review.
amend my motion that we send it to the town attorney first for recommendations and approval. Okay, moved and seconded. And so was the first motion wasn't seconded anyway, so that one's done. So any further discussion? No, Ricky,
I haven't read it all, but I'll go along with it to get it to the lawyer.
Barbara,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses. Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, really.
You guys must be like,
Or zoomed through those 97 pages.
all right, next up on the agenda is we have the Roads Committee recommendations for 2022 paving projects. And
And I put the printouts of the background materials on the page.
so I'll take a motion, to open this item.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All right, it's open for discussion.
Much easier to read than on my phone.
Melanie, would you like me to do just a quick overview?
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, we have Jack Sutton, the Dean of the Roads Committee here, so he can answer questions. And Jason Stevens, our Road Commissioner, is also on the Zoom call. But what you have before you is a recommendation from the Roads Committee for our 2022 paving project. And the roads that would be paved would be the Depot, Guptill Roads, Old Route 27, Hewlin and School Streets, Red Oaks Lodge Road, Lakeshore Drive, Minot Hill Road, the East-West Lane, and the transfer station, along with the transfer station that we didn't pay previously.
Do you see Jason there somewhere?
Yeah, he's listed under his wife's name, Heather.
Oh, okay, because I'm like, he's not there.
Okay. So, so anyway, you may remember that.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good night.
We obviously did some paving at the transfer station. This would do the rest of the complex along with the road leading in. So the total price tag, as you can see from the larger of the two spreadsheets for that, would be about $1 million. But the road committee has a recommendation to pave those roads with two exceptions. And those are the Minot Hill Road and East-West Lane. They're in reasonably good shape, but they could use some attention, and we think they are good candidates for the town to try chip sealing at a much reduced cost than paving. And what chip sealing is, it involves spraying a thin layer of liquid asphalt on the road and binding it with gravel. And essentially what that does is the asphalt provides a protective layer on the road that prevents water from seeping into the road, because once water gets into the pavement, and especially down to the base, it causes a degradation of the base, and that causes deterioration of the whole road, and eventually you're going to have to rebuild the whole road. So through my ongoing professional education and training, I hooked up with the Gardner Public Works Director at a session of the Maine Town and City Managers Association, and it was on road pavement preservation. And he said that this, along with crack sealing, are the two best ways that you can preserve the investment that you make in your paving project. So again, we don't know that this is that these roads necessarily need paving right now, so we think that they're good candidates. And the reason these roads were chosen is they're two different types of roads, so it gives us two different sorts of experiences. One is a through road with heavy traffic, that being the Minot Hill Road. The other is an east-west lane, which is more of a neighborhood road. Now, I will tell you, two of the downsides of chip sealing is that when it's first done, it produces a rougher ride because of the gravel aggregate that's on top. And it's also noisier as a result of that when you're driving in your car. But the traffic eventually smooths those rough edges. And in the Northeast, that's helped even further by snowplow, knocks off the rough edges of those after your first season of snowplow. Now, the cost difference from paving to chip sealing the Minot Hill Road is the difference between $200,000 and $32,000. And the difference between paving the east-west lane is $96,000 versus $21,000 for chip sealing. So if we did that, we could reduce the overall project cost by nearly $250,000, reducing that overall cost to $765,000. We talked about having budgeting a contingency, and Jack suggested that that is something that we could do within our road maintenance capital reserve, because that road maintenance capital reserve at the end of last year was $275,000. It'll grow a little bit this year, not as much as it has the last 2 years, because Jason's done a really good job of putting his budget to good use this year. So, that's the proposal. And then if you were to go with that, with the $765,000 project cost, then the select board's decision is, well, do we finance that over 2 years or 3 years? Because if we did a 2-year payoff with the debt service, we could maintain a debt service that's pretty comparable to what we've had the last few years. And we could get to the next round of roads a year earlier. And those are mostly in North Belgrade. A 3-year payoff would lower the debt service, and that might soften the onus of the proposed compensation package that we discussed on Sunday. But the downside of that is we might see a rise in the mill rate to cover an increase in debt service in 2025. So I blew through that pretty quickly, but that's the recommendation from the Rhodes Committee.
So I guess the very first thought that I have is that in 2019, I was approached by someone about chip sealing. Brought it to the select board at the time and was told that it's an absolute no-go Northeast, that this was tried in West Gardner. And that,
That's what I want to tell you.
I was just gonna say that.
West Gardner just did a couple roads, and I think you probably ought to get with West Gardner and get the roads that were done, let the board and the road committee drive down. I've been on them, and the roads are in good shape. I was impressed. They're real good. They're smooth.
Because in 2019, what was coming was that they were rougher than rough. People hated them. The citizens were all complaining.
Right. The biggest thing as a board, you guys got to take on consideration is they cause flat tires, and they cause a large amount of flat tires.
That was the
And
other
the
thing.
board, as far as I'm concerned, the town is probably liable for them flat tires.
Now, would we be liable for the flat tires any more than we would be if somebody hits a pothole and gets a flat tire? If they call the town, we're supposed to go fill the pothole, but we're not required by insurance to provide a tire.
Well, I can tell you, you're gonna have a line of probably taxpayers in your board meetings requesting you to.
Because I know
On
we
a
else,
pothole, if you don't fill it within, I believe it's 3 days, you are responsible
responsible
for
for it.
tires, alignments, any other damage
Right.
from the car.
Yep,
You've been informed that it's there.
So it's used throughout the South. It was used in the place where I came from. I'm not aware of it causing any flat tires. It does produce a rougher ride, and people do initially complain about that. And I think part of that, Melanie, comes from the fact that people, they see the work being done and they think that the road is being repaved. And so this is not repaving. I mean, it is a maintenance function. That, as I said, it does initially produce a rougher ride, but as traffic rolls over it, and of course, where I came from, there was no snow plowing. The snow plows, you know, I'm told by the Gardner Public Works Director, knocks off the hard edges.
like I said, West Gardner, the roads I've been on in West Gardner, they did this year are beautiful. I mean, they're just as flat as a pancake, they're smooth. They do make your tires howl a little bit more when you go across it. But what I saw, them are in good shape. And I can tell you my experience in Belgrade, and Jack can probably remember when it was done. I was gonna say it's probably 30, maybe 35 years ago. They did the nose road that way. And that held for 30 years.
do you remember that, Jack?
No,
But the nose road was done with chip seal, location road, nose road. I was a teenager, or maybe even it was before I was driving.
I'm not sure if I want to see it on roads with a speed limit higher than like 25 or 30 miles an hour.
Well, because that's the things, the mine at home road's 40 miles an hour.
And I'm not
45.
I'm not crazy about doing my bill, but like east-west, it's a dead-end road. It's a residential road. The speed limit shouldn't be that high. So you shouldn't be getting
You did it.
blown tires or things like that. Ones that the speed limit's higher on, I have probably, and after a while, it probably isn't gonna be as noisy, but I think anything with a lot of residential people on it, Minor Hills kind of neat. I think if you get up 45 miles an hour, you're gonna have cars that make howling noises driving by your house all the time.
I know this road in West Gardner was done, and maybe Litchfield / West Gardner, but they're both from one end to the other end, has heavy farm traffic on it, has a milk truck on it every other day, has farm tractors on it, has done, you know, there's 2 or 3 construction businesses on that same road. So it is handling heavy so far, you know, it's handling, and if you're gonna do it, it's something, you can't wait until August, September to do this stuff. You gotta do it in June, so you have all summer for this stuff to set. And that's a problem we have in this town, is our stuff, like road stuff, doesn't get done until the end of the summer or into fall. And that can't happen. If you're gonna do gyp sealing, you got to do it early summer.
Yeah, and Bruce is right. It has to be done during the summertime because it's a warm weather activity. And
I've been on the roads in New Hampshire. New Hampshire's done a few of their main roads.
And I've lived on residential streets that have had chip sealing, that the traffic, the speed limit was 30 miles an hour. And I think my experience was I could hear it more in my car as I was driving than I could, in my home as cars were driving by.
So you turned your radio up.
Well, that's what I meant by it being noisy.
How about to Dan's point, how about the transfer station roads and the transfer station itself where the speed limit is posted at 5 miles an hour?
Yeah,
I was
a place
thinking-
like that would be a good place to try it out. Again, east-west lanes, because it's speed limits down, should be down. I don't want the speed limit on that. It can't be more.
I don't even think there's nothing posted on East West.
Yeah, I mean,
The problem at the transfer station would be is you'd have to fix some of the base.
Yeah, so the concern at the transfer station, we saw it when we repaved around the recycling centers, there's just so many rocks and boulders in the base that really needs to be excavated, put new gravel in, and then build the road from there. So,
Yeah, because unfortunately they did that when they made the landfill. They just used all that rock and stumps and stuff and put it in the roadway.
And use
So
it as landfill.
So it's all starting to decay, so now that's why we're getting sinkholes, because of stumps and stuff are finally decaying, as way back before my time.
We should have put those washers in that ended up over on the Chandler Road. Just kidding. So. What are your thoughts, Ricky? Because I know when I brought this to us in 2019, it was like totally different discussion. Everybody was like, heck no. Rick, are you still in? Oh, no, you're gone.
Elvis has left the building.
I see his chair. So I was like, I didn't hear any thunks.
Jack, in the roads committee, was it a consensus that this would be a good thing? Or was it sort of a split vote?
I heard a consensus.
Yeah.
We went back and forth between whether it should be just the east-west or whether it would be east-west of the Minded Hill. And I think at the end, it was a consensus that we try on one fairly heavily used road and one that was typical of the dead end roads that
Right.
are represented in a number of places in town.
I mean, to me, I guess I look at, with as much challenges we're going to have with our budget, this is a way to really get an idea of if it's going to work with not a huge investment.
Now, what about the Depot Road? That's probably got more traffic on it than the Minded Hill Road.
So
does.
that's one that's got to be rebuilt because in fact, Jason estimated gravel for the Depot Road would be about $40,000 just to build that road back up. And I think there was some reclaim that was taken away from that road the last time it was paved, and so it's resulted in some issues.
That's the only way, at that time, if you guys remember, asphalt was extremely high, the road needed to be done because it was gone, so that was the way the board could save money, was to haul the reclaim off against the road commissioner's suggestion at that time.
I would
Yeah,
think-
2,200 feet of road that's really low and sunk down in that road that needs to be built up. So
Is that the one with that big culvert jump every spring?
mostly by Donnie Hammond's down through that section by the fields right there. The road's a lot lower than the fields. So the water all sits in the road right there. So a couple other areas too. So
And of course, that road sees some heavy traffic with the school buses
School
and
buses.
and some excavation trucks.
Well, that was my thought. I was like, well, if we want people driving over it, let's get the weight of the school buses and,
Well, and one thing about the Minot Hill Road is it does see a lot of heavy traffic, like Bruce alluded to with all the Hammond trucks.
well, what I was wondering, instead of doing that road, if you want to see how it would hold up with heavy trucks and heavy traffic, what would be wrong with doing old Route 27?
Old Route 27.
You get some heavy trucks coming on in and out of Gagney's all the time. You want to see how it's gonna hold up.
And Pat Jackson
Yeah,
uses that
that
stretch
section
too.
coming out.
Yeah. What are your thoughts with that, Jason?
Yeah, that's possible. I don't see why we couldn't. I think it goes further than just crack sealing, because we spent like 10 grand on crack sealing this year, and it didn't seem to go that far. So the price of this seems like it gonna get a lot more for the money versus crack sealing. I know I mean, like doing old Route 27, we're not just crack sealing, we're like bypassing paving, but I think it's better than spending money on crack sealing by far. I think you get more for like crack sealing on steroids, I guess, is what I think of it.
Yeah, well, because I think it was State Paving was the one who had approached me at O'Connor's and mentioned it, and I brought it to the board at the time, and it was a different discussion.
Right.
And actually, what I was hearing at that time was, you know, they said we did these sections in West Gardner. And what we were hearing at that time was that folks weren't happy with the chip seal.
I don't know about the rough ride and the flat tires or anything about that. So I don't know how bad that is, because I've never really experienced it too much. So
Jason, is the condition of Old Route 27 such that you think that it would be a candidate for this, or does it really need to be repaved?
depends on how rutted it is. I'd have to look at it. If it's too rutted, I don't think they put enough liquid asphalt and gravel on it to fill it up so it's even, I guess what I'm trying to say. So I think there's a point where it goes too far. And I mean, unless they put like 4 inches of this stuff in there, it's too far gone. Then they have to reclaim it and pave it. So like the hill is in between crack sealing and paving. So do you just do the this stuff, or I don't know, you know, what everybody.
So this is not a fill or a mix or anything. It's just a thin layer of asphalt.
Yeah,
That's why I make a suggestion that you guys in the road committee go to get the list of roads in West Garden and go on them. I mean, I was amazed. I mean, I was against it when you guys were talking about it 2 or 3 meetings ago. And after driving on the road of it, I'm like, I was quite impressed.
Well, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not hung up as a member of the road committee on any particular road. I do think some experimentation is in order if we're going to move forward and if we're going to reduce our road costs overall. Looking back over the last 6 years, we've had now 2 3-year programs. And we've set our sights on paving it in the area of, not exactly, but the area of $400,000 a year. Last year was $1.2 million program. We saved some money on it, put it in the reserve. This year, I don't think it'll be up that high. It can be lower. My personal preference is to leave it at 3 years because it is a big bite, but it's big enough in each of the big bites to attract major players in the game rather than fly-by-night driveway type operations. Doing a little patchy patchwork here and there. Everywhere. We've got the roads in a good part of the south side of town in good shape. This program is, as it's structured, is to do the rest of it. And then in the next 3-year program, move on to North Belgrade, get all of our roads in decent shape, and then spend what money is reasonably necessary to maintain them as long as possible. In my opinion, that's the way to, in the long run, keep road costs down to the minimum and still have quality roads in town. So it's not a year-to-year thing. It's a looking ahead
right.
each year.
It was like starting with the 5-year plan and then the 10-year plan
And I do think this crack sealing is an important part of preserving, just as Jack's talked about, preserving the roads that we have paved as we move forward.
And just putting down the chip seal with a layer of asphalt is fine. But crack sealing properly done, and I can't vouch for the fact that it was totally done properly. involve blowing the cracks out with compressed air. So that the oil sealant penetrates down through the crack and not just over the surface
Instead of just like
of the mud
painting
that's
it
in
on.
the surface,
Yeah,
or the weeds that's in the surface. And I think that needs to be a specified part of any crack sealing that we do.
yeah. I can picture that. Bruce?
Do you guys, or Jason, do you guys think the Horse Point Road's gonna make it for 3 years?
Yeah, I'm sure it will. Yeah, there's a couple areas that are gonna be stove up probably, but yeah, it'll make it for 3 years. It's gotta be ground. It's to the point where it's gotta be reclaimed pretty much now anyway, so pretty sure it will make it.
So is that in the 4 and 5 year plan?
Yeah, you know, assuming we do all these roads, then we're looking at roads like Horse Point, McGraw Pond Station, Dameron Road.
I don't mean to be foolish about sticking to a 3-year plan. If the Horse Point or parts of the Horse Point Road are bad, they become unsafe, they become bad to drive, unsafe to drive, then we're gonna have to do something as soon as we can do it, as an exception, you know.
Yeah, we don't want people.
We can't be foolish about it. No.
I don't really see that happening, but yeah, I mean, it could. Can't say that it couldn't, but
So can I just ask a question about procedure here?
Yeah.
Because is this part of, going to be part of the warrant for 2022?
Yes.
Yes.
So if we'd had this information, we would have discussed this at the budget workshop. on
Well, I mean, this is
Sunday.
not part of the operating budget. This is more of a capital cost.
We didn't get to the roads in the budget.
I know. So I was just wondering, but this isn't the discussion that we would have had. on
No,
Sunday.
no, that we were prepared to talk about the operating budget for road maintenance. And this is again, sort of considered a capital improvement program.
Okay.
This would have been in the budget.
Yeah, it absolutely would have been part of the budget and we would have been discussing it. Then I don't feel like any of our road projects are not part of the operating budget because the operating budget for the roads.
Well, I mean, if it's part of the operating budget, it would be as debt service.
So is this going to be going in front of the budget committee?
I hadn't planned on it.
It should.
Supposed to.
Yeah,
Okay, well, we can have a meeting of the budget committee.
Well, couldn't we do it at our January meeting? January 5th meeting? Or do you need to know before then?
Should be discussed before, I think. That's just me.
Either way, I mean, you know, our drop dead date for getting everything done is January 19th.
Right. If we don't need to decide tonight, it would give us time to go down and ride over to West Gardner.
Yeah, it's West
If
Gardner,
anyone-
Litchfield, yeah. Like I said, you guys will be amazed when you drive on it.
What's the road?
I can't remember the name of it. I just drive, I drive across it. Actually, I'm going down there either tomorrow or Thursday now, get the name of the road. I'll send it to Anthony.
well, and I checked with them too. I mean, did they do any other ones?
This
Because
is
they
a
did,
fairly long road. so-
right, because I thought they did a couple there as like kind of an experiment too. So if we could find a couple of those.
The older
probably-
ones.
Yeah, so you can see how they've held up.
See, I know this road here was in fairly good shape, but it had several cracks in it, like Jason was saying. I think this works better than crack sealing. You know, it's cheap, you know, because you get more footage for
More
the buck.
coverage.
Yeah, more coverage for the buck. And that's, I think they did instead of crack sealing, I think they did the chip sealing instead of crack sealing.
And not to diminish crack sealing, because again, the
Right.
Public Works Director and Gardner said those are the two main things you can do to preserve the pavement. Crack sealing, chip sealing.
And so if we're deciding among roads, what's the objection to doing Minot Hill Road? Why Route 20, old Route 27 as opposed to Minot Hill Road?
I'd rather use one that the general public isn't driving on in cars as much. I'd rather see a hold up for heavy trucks first, make sure it's gonna hold up. especially if we find out that you are having problems with tires. And without knowing that, if you're driving 45 miles an hour up there and you start having people losing tires and stuff, it's not gonna be pretty safe. So I just want to make sure that we're not. gonna have
I mean,
trouble with
it's
that.
gonna be like when they grade it, when May no Fords, it's gonna be the same, it's the same stuff. So, if you
When they
drive-
do the what?
when they grade the roads up in the no Fords,
Okay. So I thought
when
you
it's
said-
freshly graded,
Oh,
you
yeah.
better have a bunch of tires.
Yes. I lost 2 of those one year. And the Hammond Lumber actually put a tire on a truck for me and brought it to Greenville so that I could get the tire and get it put on because I'd used my spare.
So Jason said he would check Route 27, Old Route 27 to see if that needs,
See if it qualifies.
see if
for
it
it.
qualifies.
Yeah, I'll check that out, see if it's gone too far.
So is everybody amicable to doing a little bit of, Jason, if you'll check that out to see if that might be possible, and if anybody who can get out to West Gardner, and just checks that out,
Maybe see if they get flat tires out there on them roads. How many?
Find out what's happening.
Yeah. Because it just makes me think of, it was a handful of years ago where our Mets for the sand and salt had rocks in it, like bigger than usual. And we had complaint after complaint after complaint about people losing their windshields because they were spinning up from the one in front of it. And so I don't want us to get into a position where we have to pay for things that, if we're saving money, we want to save it.
They've got for damages and complaints.
What's that?
I think I'm sorry. I think that the chip seal question is a minor element in this overall program.
Yeah.
And my personal concern would be whether the overall program, give or take, chip sealing in 1 or 2 roads here, which can, I think, be fairly easily settled one way or the other. My major concern is whether this program makes sense from the board's standpoint.
Jason, what type do they use chip sealing, do you know?
I'm not sure. I'll have to find out. I know he said Allstate does it. And I'm gonna ask him how far a road can go before it's too late to chip seal it. I mean, like, if you get like a 3-inch rut in it or,
They.
It was also approached, not
They
state
did-
construction.
They did McGraw Pond Road a long time ago with that. And they did have a lot of trouble with flat tires, but that was years ago. I'm sure technology's changed since then.
it's pretty reasonable cost, I thought. I mean, $2.50 I think it's $2.50 a foot or something like that. It's pretty reasonable cost. I don't see how they can do it for that really, but
No brainer.
Did they approach us or did we reach out about it?
What's that?
Did they approach us about this or did this just come about from your conversation with
this
the
just
town
came about
manager?
from my talking with at the conference that I attended with the Gardner Public Works Director, and he and I have had some ongoing conversations. He's provided me some more and more information as we've gone along, just as far as how you calculate the cost of this. And Rick, if you're interested, and if you think it would be helpful, he also sent me the specs for chip sealing.
Can you send me, email that to me?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So does Gardner have some roads they've done this on?
Oh, yes.
And could you check with them and see if they've had any problem with tires?
Yeah, so I know that also the town of Solon, am I
Yeah.
pronouncing that correctly?
Mhm.
Has also done this, and so I made a note here. I'm gonna check with them just to see if they've had any issues with flat tires.
Chesterville and Fayette has to.
Yeah, but overall, I mean, I'm comfortable with the number of roads, the ones that you've chosen. The folks in the village are gonna be psyched. They've long felt like School Street and Union Road not
School
got
Street
enough
is so bad.
attention.
Oh, my God. It's so bad.
Yes, sir.
To me, what's really important about this chip sealing is not so much what we do this time. Yes, we should try it out in whatever we feel comfortable with. trying it out. But looking ahead, when all of the roads are in good shape, when we've got good basis on all of the roads, now we've got to maintain them. And this is a way potentially to maintain them at much lower cost.
Right.
Really extend their life.
So it's worth going
Worth
through the
experimenting with.
experimentation in a controlled way.
Mhm. And how long would it take to know? I mean, is it just one season or 2 seasons, 3 seasons until we know how it?
Well, if we have a 3-year program now, by the next time around, we should have a much better idea of whether we want to proliferate it or say, gee, no, this is not right for us.
When you're checking on tires and things like that, Anthony, can you ask them how it's been for anything like motorcycles driving?
Okay.
Yeah.
Mine told a lot of motorcycle traffic.
Very good point. Yeah. So to speak to what Jason was saying, chip sealing is anywhere from $1.75 to $3 per square yard. And so the longer the road, the more that you're chip sealing in one long stretch, the lower the price will be per square yard. So $1.75 to $3 per square yard compared to $15 to $20 per square yard for reclaiming and paving.
Oh, it obviously makes sense. It's a different product and it's a lot less product. So.
Well, yeah, and I'm just interested in seeing, because the conversation tonight's very different from when I brought it up in 2019. And in 2019, it was an absolute no-go. Nobody wanted to hear about it. I had to go back and tell Allstate, sorry. They said, we brought this to the town of Belgrade several times and we've been.
So are we going to vote on this tonight or just wait until we have more information?
No, so this is just the recommendations. We're not voting on it, but if we can bring this back to the next meeting. So-
You want it at the December 21st meeting or the January 5th budget meeting?
So at the January 5th budget meeting, wouldn't we be presenting what was our final, what we're looking to put forward? So does it
Well,
make sense
yeah,
to
I
bring
guess as
this
far as
forward to the 12/21?
As far as the budget goes, and I'm hoping we'll talk about some warrant articles at that time too. So I think this could, I mean, maybe let's bring it back to the December 21st meeting and then maybe try to have a warrant article drafted for your consideration on January the 5th.
Tax budget committee can take a look at it too.
Yeah, and I'll get with Gary Mahler about that. So one thing that would be helpful for us though, is what are your thoughts as to whether or not we try to finance this 2 years versus 3 years?
I like 3.
I think it depends on whether we use the chip sealing or not. I mean, you're saving a substantial amount of money on Minot Hill. I mean, it's 176,000 as opposed to 32. So if you're going to pull some of that out, so you have a lower budget, I would think maybe 2 years, but if you're not going to do that, I think you need to go 3.
Yeah.
Just,
Well, and at least what I'm hearing is we want to try chip sealing. It's just finding the right candidate for that. And Minot Hill's like the longest road that we're looking at to do this year anyway. So that is where you would see the greatest savings. And so if we do a shorter road, then we won't realize quite as much savings.
Yeah, but I mean, you could always do Old Route 27 and you could check out some of the other smaller roads and see if there's a section you could do on some of those to. Try to
Well, and
offset
again,
it.
yeah, and again, I think East-West Lane is a good candidate of a neighborhood
Yeah, if
road.
we're
to
gonna do
try.
one, I would try that one on Lakewood Road, because that one hasn't been that long since it was paved, right?
It hasn't.
It seems like
what
it wasn't
about
that many
Gupta?
years
Was
ago
that,
we
that's
approved.
similar in length?
That is a road that badly needs reclaiming, repaving.
Like School Street.
Like School Street.
Okay,
But to Jeff's
Let's
point,
take a look at
are we looking at doing as major a paving project in the next year? We're talking about bringing all roads
Yeah,
up to standard.
I think, and Jason, please weigh in on this, but I think the next set of roads that we do would probably be greater mileage as a whole than what we have here tonight. Is that a fair assessment, Jason?
Yeah, we'll concentrate on North Belgrade in the next project be like Horse Point Road, McGraw Pond Road, the Damon Road, and all the roads, the Station Road possibly, and possibly like the Taylor Woods roads. So it's more cost efficient to do a bunch in one area than move to another area as the next paving project. So, yeah.
So the Horse Point Road is one of our longest roads in town,
Yeah.
so that'll be quite a bit of mileage.
But the whole Horse Point Road isn't in bad shape. It's the low line section of it that's in bad shape.
Yeah, there's a few on the S curves going down that's getting broke up pretty bad, but section that Kevin built when he was road commissioner, that's held up really well. And yeah, a lot of it's pretty good shape. There's some areas where it's getting bad, but I think it'd be good for another 3 years. So
that'd be a road, maybe you could do chip sealing on part of it.
That's what I was just thinking. If you got a really good section, chip seal
In 3 years. I'll put chip
that's
seal on it.
awesome. Good idea.
But to answer your question, Barbara, I would expect that the next round of paving will be more expensive than this round.
More miles and more cost.
Yeah.
So we would, but we would, I'm seeing now that this would be in 2024, that we would do the roads and road.
It just depends on whether we do a 2-year plan versus a 3-year plan.
So it'd be 2025.
Right, so we're not gonna have this concurrently.
Correct.
Right,
We pay off one before we start.
that's correct.
Okay, okay, I get it.
Yeah, exactly. All the way.
All right, so Jason, are you comfortable getting a little bit more information for us? We'll see if we can't get a couple folks who can go out and, you know, once we figure out where some of these roads are, folks can travel them and.
Yeah, I'll see how far a road can go before it's too late to do chip sealing. Because I mean, like old 27, I don't know if it's got too big of ruts in it or what. I'll ask them.
Yeah,
Look at it.
yeah, I appreciate it. We're always looking for, you know, new ideas, but
Sandy River Road Fair was a good one to look at. That road was really far gone and they chip sealed it.
What's the name of the road?
Sandy River Road Fair,
In Fayette?
yeah, that road was really almost back, really gone. And all they did is chip seal.
all right. Perfect. Does anybody else have anything on this for this evening? All right, seeing none, we will get to the discussion and consideration of awarding an information technology services contract.
Melanie, you wanted me to do a short little presentation here? Or?
Yes.
Okay, so we issued the RFP for IT services. We got 6 responses, and those responses are in the little spreadsheet in your packet. It was kind of, in some ways, it was difficult to really compare those because they didn't all sort of fully bid on the proposal. Nick Poole, who is our resident technology expert, and I looked at all of the responses that we got, and we agreed that Maine Technology Group, who is our current vendor, offered the most complete and the most competitive response to the RFP. And you can see the bullet points there as to why we believe that. One of the things that they did that we appreciated was a full complement of cybersecurity, because I just have a concern that at some point our systems could be hacked into. We do have personal information, and we don't ever want to be locked out of our systems and be a victim of ransomware.
That is awful.
Yeah. And so this also includes replacement of our server, because it's at the end of its lifespan. And one of the things that Maine Technology proposed was hardware as a service, where we would essentially be purchasing space on a server as opposed to investing in a piece of hardware. That space would be divided into what are called virtual servers, so that each of those spaces would have a specific function so that they could operate a little bit more efficiently. One of the things that we have appreciated about Maine Technology Group is they have provided an excellent level of customer service. Whenever we have called them, they have been Johnny on the spot, been very responsive to any of our needs. And so John Perkins, who is the Executive Vice President of Main Technology Group, is on the call, as is Nick Poole. And so that's, we're recommending that we sign a 3-year contract with Main Technology Group with a 3-year option for renewal.
Okay, so the first thing that I had said to Anthony when I got a copy of the agenda was that we had put out an RFP and specifically requested that people give us a price for a server. That we didn't get one from Main Technology, so Anthony followed up with John Perkins, who he says gave him a better understanding of a virtual server. We'd still have a piece of hardware, but the space within the server would be divided to accommodate varying functions. As he was just saying, storage would remain in the server versus in a cloud. So the difference of hardware as a service versus a server is ownership of the machine. So with the former, Perkins Company would own the hardware and takes financial responsibility should it go haywire. Also, we would avoid the upfront cost of a piece of equipment that would need to be replaced in 5 to 7 years. So then you did say that he was going to quote a price for our buying a server.
Yeah, and
Did we have, I didn't see that anywhere.
yes, it's I put 2 different quotes in there, and so on the second quote, it's on page 2, and then continues to page 3, and so John did mistakenly include tax in there. Of course, we're tax exempt, so the cost would be $18,955 if we purchased a server versus doing hardware as a service.
So 18,000.
955.
So that far exceeds any of the other server quotes than we received from the folks who did quote us a server from the get-go.
That's right. The lowest price for a server that was quoted to us was $8,000.
Right, so we're looking at it between 8,000 and 19,000, we may as well say, if we round that.
If we
18.
were to purchase it versus taking on the hardware as a service for a server.
Okay, because the other piece of that for me is that if we go with this and then 3 years down the road, we change groups, that we don't own our server.
That is correct.
Somebody else owns our server and we either have to buy our server, buy our information back, and I have no intention of ever having to buy back the town's information.
I don't think that would be the case, but John, can you respond to that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is absolutely not the case. If our services come to an end, and we have your information is always owned by you. And that's backed up by case law. I can't keep your information. And that's not the way we do business anyway. If we lose to another company or we're asked to stop doing services and another company takes over, we are a professional company and we turn over all the information and all the data and we do a smooth handoff with a replacement company. But for you to have to buy your data, that's not a thing. So what would happen in that case is we would either leave the server in place until somebody provided a similar service, or until you bought a server, or you can actually potentially buy out the server at the end of the agreement and leave it in place without moving it at all, depending on the condition of the equipment at the time. So it doesn't hold you hostage in any way. The only thing that it does is relieves you of the operational expense, the capital expense of buying the server now. In this case, I buy the server, put it in place, program it, and it runs. And if it fails in any way, I replace those parts that fail and make it continue to run over the 36-month agreement.
Now, on the RFP, you said they were the ones that bid closest to the request. How come nobody bid on what we requested?
I don't know, Dan. I mean, we got, I think some, and Nick, you may want to weigh in on this too. We got some, what we consider to be sort of odd responses to the RFP. And, you know, when you look at the RFP, it's pretty easy. You could go through it, just answer each
Well, that's
question.
the
by
reason
question.
I asked, because I mean, most RFPs, we don't get what we asked for, we throw them in the trash.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm just wondering how we ended up with none of them that actually met our.
Well,
bid.
and so there were two of them that we felt like were reasonable responses to the RFP. And of those two, we thought Main Technology Group was the better of the
Okay.
two. And,
So
and
what did Main Technology Group say as to why they didn't bid it the way the RFP?
no, Main Technology Group was one of the ones that bid it as the RFP. So what we had in the RFP was a server or hardware as a service. They bid hardware as a service.
Okay,
And so then we went back and said, you know, just
Okay.
for.
I just want to make sure that we.
Oh, yeah.
Actually were bid the way we requested.
No, they were one of the two outfits that actually followed the RFP.
Well,
And so, and
You had said at the beginning something about the two that have been the closest, and I went, well, wait a minute, why closest?
well, and so just for clarity's sake, once we got the bid for the hardware as a service, then we asked them to provide a bid on purchasing a server, just so you could have that as a source of comparison.
Well, in our RFP, it actually said vendors should propose replacing and installing a new server along with the cost of that and the use of a new server through a hardware as a service subscription. So it wasn't an either or, it was an in addition to.
How long has our previous contract been?
3 years.
3 years. Okay.
I believe, is that town policy or state law for municipalities, 3 years?
Honestly, don't know.
It's at least town policy.
Yeah.
Well, it's because when we were doing stuff yearly, contracts were coming up at different times. So we were like, well, if we do,
Yeah, well, and I was told, you know, like 5 years is just something that we typically don't do. 3 years is sort of our cap.
I think it's because the boards change every 3 years.
and
You
then
know,
there was
a
also,
board member only, you know, term is a 3-year term. I think that's what I was told. several
Hard
years
to,
ago.
hard to project 5 years without projecting high. So the better the time, you're much closer to a real price. By projecting out 5 years, you're gonna protect yourself. Then possibly overpay.
So are we ready to make a motion?
yeah.
After 3 years, what would be the cost for us to buy out that server?
John?
Well, it's hard to tell, Dan, only because over the 3 years, if we have to beef it up, we would add RAM. If we have to replace drives, you know, so it's kind of like a living thing. If you wanted to cap it, I could put, you know, a maximum, but I would just, you know, I would negotiate a price with either the board or Anthony, if that was the case at the end of the 3 years. And we can look at the year and the date of birth of the chassis of the equipment at the time. Usually the cost is way lower, just because, you know, in 3 years, the lifespan of a server generally is anywhere between 5 and 7. So if you get 3 years in, the value drops considerably.
And John, do we tend to use more than 6 hours? I see you've increased from 3 hours to 6 hours.
Yeah, I actually did that without increasing the the cost of the services that refers to. And the reason I did it was because we found that we were at 2 hours of service prior to this for the last 3 years. And we found that the town folk, being frugal, Nicholas was trying to do a lot of it himself. And that's not the environment that we'd like to set. We'd like to make it so that everybody at the town can do the role that they were hired to do. And we can take care of the IT and keep it up and running at the maximum amount of uptime. So I increased it to 6 hours because generally it looked like we could possibly average around 5 hours a month, but we weren't getting called for a lot of it. And I wanted to relieve Anthony and Nicholas from doing those pesky things that pop up.
Anybody have any more questions? I would make a motion that we continue the contract with Main Technology Group for our IT services.
Second.
Which one, which-
The one where they purchase the server and we essentially rent virtual space. So what's our total amount? Where's my page for that?
So that would be on page. Page 5 of the first. Which is $1,458.45 per month.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I was like, well, that amount cannot be right. So what's our yearly? And if we're doing it over the cost of 3 years? Is this price is held for 3 years, or is this price? John, is there an incremental increase in this over the 3 years, or is this the price by the month? What page is that?
Oh, no, that's the hard one. Has the tax in there.
John, so back to you. So is it $1458.45 per month for 3 years?
It's $14.58 per month for the first year, and then there's a 3% riser. And the 3% risers are, at the end of year 1, the end of year 2, and that is to cover obviously increase in personnel costs as well as training, certifications, that kind of thing.
Okay, so where's the riser in here?
It's on page 6,
Page
right?
6.
Opposite overlay. Up at the top,
Gotcha.
escalator.
So usually, Anthony, did you happen to do the numbers, or we have a breakdown of year 1, 2, and 3?
Do that really quick.
We can do $14.58 a month for the first year, $15.01 per month for the second year, and then $15.47 a month for the third year.
So 17,496 for year 1. $18,012 for year 2. And 18,564 for year 3.
How much of bubble, how much more is that than we're paying now? How much increase is that?
So currently we're paying $1,068 per month. And most of the reason for the increase is for the upgraded cybersecurity.
Which gets more and more important the more you hear stories.
Okay, so 54,072. Okay. All right, so that's my motion. Is there a
To
second?
accept the contract for the
To accept the contract with Main Technology Group for a term of 3 years. Total amount over the 3 years, $54,072.
Second,
Moved and seconded. Is there any more discussion? Seeing none. Ricky,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Carol,
yes.
Dan.
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate your
All
trust.
right, thank you.
Hey,
Okay.
John, before you take off, I need to catch up with you sometime. I've got something for Diane.
Okay,
This summer, when she retired, I've got a state capital flown flag, main state flag for a certificate, so.
oh, no kidding. All right, great. What is your, I got a pen here. What is your cell, or actually, you know what? I'll get it from Anthony. How's that?
That's fine.
I just realized we're in a public meeting, so I'll connect with him.
Let's all put Dan's number on Zoom. Everybody's like,
It doesn't matter because my cell phone's on all the legislative cards and stuff anyway, so.
Okay, appreciate it.
I get it.
All right, night, guys.
All right, good night.
Thank you.
All right, next we have the discussion of potential uses of the American Rescue Plan Act or ARPA funds and a process for deciding on issues. So one of the things that I had talked to Anthony about, we'll take a motion to open that item.
So
And moved and seconded, okay. Was that I don't want for us to have big sections of time at every select board meeting taken up with various folks' ideas for how we use the money. There are gonna be a lot of fabulous ideas that come forward. So we have got to figure out what our process is going to be. Do we, if somebody has a presentation, do we give them a time limit? Or do we set up a day for all the proposals to be discussed? So Bruce,
Have you guys got a clarification what you can use this on or not use this on yet? For one.
Yes.
For two, Dan had brought up a good thing at the DOT meeting, the last board meeting, to use some of that money to possibly move the sand salt shed out of that area.
Bruce, it's hurtful you didn't read my background.
I didn't get a chance, I'm sorry.
But yes, so I mean, I've outlined 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different potential uses of the funds. And yeah, that's an important thing that people are going to have to understand as they present their ideas, is that it's not just use the money however you wish to use it. There are very strict parameters about how you may use it. And so the 5 ideas that are in this memo that have been raised to date have all been confirmed as allowable uses of the funds. And so I completely agree with Melanie. I mean, we're not here really to talk about those ideas as much as what's the process that we want to go through in order to get public input and then, you know, to help the board with its decision making.
I would think a separate public meeting, separate from a select board meeting.
Almost
For
like a
people.
workshop.
Yeah,
type.
for people to bring ideas forward.
and then do we decide ultimately, or do we put it to a vote?
So the funds have to be appropriate. And so I think it would be, pardon the pun, appropriate that you guys come up with a recommendation that you put to the voters in a town meeting. And again, just a reminder, the funds have to be appropriated by December 31st, 2024. So we've got time. And they have to be spent by December 31st, 2026. So, you know, it does allow for some deliberation, but yes, to answer your question, I think it's appropriate to put it to the voters and let them appropriate the funds as they do all of our funds.
And what is the role as far as what we decide? How does that relate to additional monies that may be available through, say, Kennebec County?
So I think once we determine what it is that we want to do with the funds, that then allows us to go to the county and say, well, I guess there are 2 approaches actually, Barbara. That would allow us to go to the county and say, we want to use these funds for X. Are you willing to help us with this project? Or what we could do is we could ask the county for funds for ACE to fund the bulk of a specific project. And then use our ARPA funds for something separate and apart from it, or potentially related to it. And so in the case of what Bruce talked about, one of the options here is, protecting the source well for our public water system. That could be sort of a two-part project. One would be perhaps acquisition of the DOT garage. So we just stop the storage of salt there, along with moving our salt shed to some other location. So in that instance, we might approach the county about, hey, would you be willing to help us with this part of that? And then we use our funds for the other part.
But in terms of, I'm trying to remember from the meeting that we went to, in terms of the money that's available for the county, does it behoove us to get an application in there sooner rather than later?
Well, as luck would have it, I have a meeting with the county administrator tomorrow morning.
Okay.
So I will ask him.
If we were to buy the state's interest in the salt shed or whatever, are we talking 50,000, 100? Do we have any idea of a number?
Nope. And part of what they said was that they have to have the ability to come here to get sand and salt
But
because of the roads that they plow here. So if we do a swap of any sort or,
well, I think that's gonna end up changing. Because they're telling, as part of this water agreement, they are gonna close that down and not have salt and sand there.
Right.
Which means that building's not gonna be really of any use to them because they're not gonna be storing salt and sand there. So I think you're gonna find that if they want to get away from being responsible and we want to get rid of our salt and sand shed, that building's going to be available at a halfway decent price probably to the town.
Because I would think it would be a, somewhat reasonable price, but has anyone ever asked them that question?
oh, several times.
Oh, yeah, we've been
For the
trying
last
to get that
15
building for
years, we've been
years.
trying to,
Originally, that's where we wanted to buy the fire station there.
and
Yeah.
the town office, and yeah, we've approached them several
The
times.
the last thing before they decided they don't want to store salt and sand there anymore was they'd be willing to give it up to us if we'd take over plowing Route 27 and 8 and 11.
But it
As
goes all
part
the
of
way
our
to
contract.
Rome
So they didn't have to,
and,
it was from the Augusta line to Rome
right, and,
and we can't do that. We already, the contract has already said no.
Crazy.
right. Jack,
Yeah, if this is a question on eligibility for funding, whatever that is. But if we can't find an assured contractor to bid on our snow plowing contract after the contract we have now runs out, at some drop dead date, we're going to have to make a decision as a town to set up our own department to plow the snow, or find some other solution that doesn't come directly to mind. I'm wondering if any of this money that's available is applicable to that problem.
No.
It's not, okay.
But, well, perhaps in a roundabout way. And that is that if we were to acquire the DOT, that could be home base for the public works department, should it come to that.
Okay.
Also, to see in the.
But like I say, you'd never be able to put the salt and sand in your
No.
trucks and store them there.
No, well, I mean, you'd have to have your sand salt shed someplace else.
Right.
Right, but most DOT departments, before a storm, fill their trucks with sand and salt
Put them in the garage.
to be ready for the storm in the middle of the night. So if you did use that for DOT garage, for the town, for public works garage, you would have to not move the trucks until you'd have to go to the sand salt shed and move the trucks, which I think that's a good idea anyways. The way everything is with contamination and,
But you'd also have to make sure that they're empty before they ever come back.
right. And the other issue is
it's
right.
not gonna ever
So
happen.
once they're loaded, there's still spillage involved.
Yeah, you
Oh,
get your
I-
brine, once you get into the heat, that brine, that salt starts
And
melting.
anything water, snow that's gotten on it's all gonna wash
Yeah.
down through it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's gonna be complicated.
I think a workshop day makes sense.
For a workshop weekend. Just kidding.
Huh?
Involving wine.
You guys can do it next week.
Yeah.
Good
Be
idea.
careful. Two of you are gone. You guys do not like
That's
what
his
Melanie,
point.
Rick and I come up with.
That's his point. He's like,
Be
sure.
dangerous. Be careful what you ask for.
All right, Ricky, what are your thoughts? Have a public meeting and
I
have
think we
folks.
need to think about it a
Yeah.
little bit. You know, we're just grasping out of the sky right now. Let's,
Well, no, what I'm asking, Ricky, is we have, I mean, one of the proposals, they wanted to bring their proposal to tonight's meeting. And then they requested additional time to work on their proposal. So right now, tentatively, that's scheduled for our next meeting. So what I'm asking the board is, do we want to use select board meeting minutes and potentially half hours to have various organizations come in with their ideas for using this money? Or is it more useful of our time and to have all of them come more like a budget workshop, and everybody gets a set amount of time to put their proposal forward, and that it's a public meeting and the public is allowed to come and weigh in on the various proposals?
how did somebody come up with something already?
He was at our last meeting, he was talking about stormwater runoff and protecting Belgrade's lakes. So it's not to say it's a bad idea, but we have a finite amount of time at each of the board meetings and other stuff that we need to take care of. And I'm afraid if we open that up to one group, then we can't say no to the other ones coming to select board meetings for their ideas.
Why can't we just have any groups that want something, write up their proposal and submit it in writing and we just.
Yeah.
Like how we make a decision, we may have to come up with a list of priorities first before we even think about.
So that's why I'm asking. I was
Yeah,
like,
and is
I was
there
like,
any-
what do we want to do here for a policy?
Yeah.
moving
Is there any
forward?
kind of preliminary screening so that people don't waste time submitting,
Well, they-
working up a proposal that's not even acceptable?
Well, I mean, we do have the eligible uses.
Okay.
That we could, you know, just
Yeah.
let people know that if it doesn't fall within one of these umbrellas.
Yeah, don't bother.
But because for instance, I think we may have talked about this previously, you cannot use it on the roads. So there's a transportation bill that Congress passed that addresses transportation issues. And so ARPA funds are not available for any sort of road project as a for instance.
So as far as putting together a policy, do we want step one to be that any proposals are submitted in writing?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would think, you know, send them to us, and then when we sit down and start figuring out what we've got to do in this town, we can start considering them, but, you know, we may find something that has nothing to do with like quality or this or that, you know, it may end up being, we're over a barrel when it comes to this water system, and that's what we're gonna have to use these funds for.
It will very much be a competitive process. And to answer.
Competitive in what sense?
Well, I think Dan's exactly right. We're gonna have to determine what is the
yeah.
priority uses for these funds, because all of these things are worthy in their
Oh,
own
yeah.
way.
Right.
But there's only a limited amount of money.
Right.
And just to sort of answer your question, Ricky, I've been approached by constituencies for each one of these 5 ideas that are on this sheet. These are not things that I came up with whole cloth. These are things that people have approached me about.
Well, and we're not the only town that's dealing with this, so does Maine Municipal have any sort of information on what other towns are doing as far as, I mean, it's in the paper every day that,
Mhm.
you know, towns are considering various proposals.
Most of the proposals are within this scope of the ideas that have been presented. And, you know, one of Portland is gonna have no problem spending their money
Yeah.
because of many various services that they provide. Because we provide a limited number of services, we also have a limited number of options for spending the money.
Portland would spend yours, mine, ours, and every other town if they get a chance.
Jeff?
If I may ask, how much money is involved?
$332,000.
Thank you.
Which sounds like a lot, but when it comes right down to it,
Not much.
it's a drop in a bucket, really.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's a
third of
lot
our
for
budget
us,
for
but
1 year.
it doesn't go very far when you're trying to move a salt shed.
Right.
And I honestly, the thought of moving that salt shed, you know,
I mean, you have to, a study's gotta go.
we're
The only
gonna have
place
to-
I'd easily see that we own enough land around it would be, unfortunately, but I don't know.
Yeah, we need to get a geologist and we need to know what's gonna be underneath this.
Because we have test wells up there, so we could continuously test it to find out, you know, everything bleaching. That's where I said it should have went in the first place.
well, the thing was, we had to engineer where it would go to, and we were told that was the best place to put it because it was the closest proximity to the center of town, and it needed to be easily accessible for all of the contractors to access the sand and salt. So we did everything we were supposed to do for that.
What we have done and are continuing to do, as I understand it, considerable work to mitigate salt spillage from that loading, unloading, handling of salt at that
On
operation.
ours.
So Jack,
And I think we need to know and we understand the value of
I
that,
got it.
how that's helping us before we set our minds that we have to move it.
well, he's gonna show you, so this was the night before Thanksgiving, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring except DOT's mouse.
Well, the other question I've got on there is I don't know if Jason or somebody's gone over there and ditched all around it when they put that little bit of new paving down there for our resident stuff. And they took the paving and they went like this and pitched it so it all runs this way and then runs to the swamp.
Well, there's a retention pond back there that is lined, so, and so instead of going to that pond, it was going down into the bog, and so Jason ditched it so that that water would flow into that retention pond that's back behind the salt shed.
Okay.
So it is a lined pit. if you will.
Is it lined all the way along the edge of the salt and sand shed?
I see salt sheds bleeding.
Well, if you go back there, Dan, it's like a detention pond.
Yeah, I understand what y'all saying.
Liquid
But
comes
it's-
out, isn't it?
It's ditched
Goes down.
from the salt and sand shed into a trench that runs the whole length of the salt and sand shed.
So
What's
no,
gonna happen?
it's-
It's gonna soak into the ground right
It's just the
there.
pond itself. And so what we're trying to do is get it to the pond because otherwise it was going straight to the bottom.
Right now, I think it's gonna go into that trenchy bit and before it ever gets to the pond, it's gonna soak into the ground.
Yeah, you need a,
So,
yeah, and you need a fabric so the water won't soak in.
Yeah, well, that's what you're saying. He said the pond supposedly is lined,
Yeah, the
but I
pond,
don't think it's lined all the way down the side.
no, you gotta line it from that ditch all the way to the pond. The pond, like this pond, that has a liner in it.
So,
So are we gonna come up with a process or set a date for submission?
Well, so I think that's what we're doing is, you know, anybody who has an idea, submit your idea in writing to the town of Belgrade.
We want to set,
We'll put a folder together that has all of the proposals in it.
you want to set a deadline for proposals?
I don't know what really matters until we
No,
decide we're ready to act on it.
right, until we decide we're ready to have a public meeting, but at this point, I feel like folks will feel like they have ideas, we're collecting the ideas,
Okay.
and we can physically collect them in a folder. And then we can decide after, I'm gonna say after town meeting. Let's get through everything we need to do the first quarter, and then we can regroup, and if we have 10 ideas at that point, then maybe we can have a public meeting about those, or, you know, figure out how we pick which one, we're gonna move forward to that. But part of the first part of our process should be just to collect them.
Well,
I just want to make sure that the ideas that we're looking at really do, you know, fit the criteria.
Yeah.
You know, so if you can do
We can do
a
an
preliminary screening, you know, and
And I think,
Eliminate
you know,
those that don't.
and so let's say we get a half dozen written proposals, then maybe we could have like a public hearing where they come before you, they make a short spiel, and then you get to ask them questions about their proposal.
Yeah.
For a public hearing.
Yeah. You know, that seems to, then we're not, you know, if somebody could come in and use an hour's worth of time at a select board meeting.
Right.
And then we're scrambling to do the other stuff that we need to do. And then we may have somebody, you know, who's got a 5-minute proposal. So I was like, I said to Anthony, there's gonna be a lot of good ideas that come forward, and we gotta figure out how we're gonna process them and deal with them. And
Do we need to wait until after town meeting?
I was just thinking if we're
Yeah.
gonna put it out there
Okay.
that we're
Okay.
accepting stuff.
We've got the time, so. I mean,
Okay.
just, I
Yeah.
wouldn't rush this. Like I said, we've got a lot of things to think about, and we got a lot of things to deal with this water system before we even get to that. Dealing with whether it's gonna happen, whether we're putting it forward. I'd rather concentrate on that.
And dealing with that may give us some clarity for dealing with this.
Right.
You got anything else you want to weigh in on that one, Rick? Do you have a proposal?
No,
You do.
What can we build you?
I'm fine with it. Let's just get some ideas and then we'll, whatever. You know what?
That's,
Everybody wants a piece of the pie. We got to do what's for the town of Belgrade. That's our,
well, as I just said, you know, realistically, it's 1/3 of our budget for a year. You know, it's 300. So it's a couple of houses worth. If you look at it that way. So, but does that sound like a good process to you as a way to kind of collect them and then have a public meeting?
I guess so. I hadn't really thought much about it, to be honest with you. I didn't think this was gonna be such a big deal as turning into, but need to think about it a little bit more, maybe come up with a better plan.
We could just do a one-time bonus for everybody who works for the town.
Don't give them any ideas. And it probably could be used for that. I don't know.
All right. So moving on, next up, we have the warrant. You're running like the wind.
Oh, yeah, Jack. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Jack. Drive careful.
This is not August.
Oh my gosh, it was so bad last night. All right, so. Warrant number 145 in the amount of $620,320.43 dated 12/2/2000.
I'll make that motion.
It's 12/2/2021.
Oh, that's just when it was printed.
Okay. I was like, wait, did I miss something? All right, so motion and you seconded, Rick? Yes. All right. It is open for discussion.
Found someplace in here where there was staging written down twice. I wonder if that was a mistake or find it again.
One was from Hammond's and one's from McCormick's. I thought one was from Hammond's and one was from McCormick's.
Yes, you're right.
I think there were two different.
One's from Hammond on page 4.
It was for two different companies, but I'm wondering why we bought staging two different places, I guess.
Yeah,
Well, and did
McCormick
we-
is on page
6.
5. Bottom of page 5. Staging
Okay.
is on page 6.
The other one was from McCormick's, I believe.
It was.
Top of page 6.
So Rick, I don't know the answer to that question, but I can find out tomorrow.
Well, and I'm wondering, did we buy staging or did we rent it? Because one is $66.17 and the other one is $284.96.
Yeah, they're both for staging for Dalton.
One of them
So-
just says
so the
pump
one-
basement out staging to put roof up.
So the one from Hammond
Don't repairs.
is for 12 by 16 and 4 by 16. Wood to make, staging to put roof up.
Oh, just wood.
That's just wood. And then
Tools for shop. That's kind of an interesting one. And we have just general. I think
So from McCormick, we bought a 3-rung ladder jack. So it looks like it was or D-rung style ladders. So it looks like it was ladders that we bought from McCormick and wood from Hammond.
So are we taking those ladders, putting the wood across it and using that as staging?
I don't know the answer.
And please tell me that's OSHA compliant, because that does not sound to me like.
It is if they're using it for, they do have it for the brackets. You hook on the ladders and you put the planks in between, and that is.
The brackets hold it in place, right?
But you gotta be tied off. If you're on that type of station, you have to be tied off. You have to have harness tied off.
What roof were we putting up?
So we're replacing the roof at one of the Dalton properties.
And
And we're doing it ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it complete?
No.
Probably matches the window, right?
So I don't know. I guess I feel like some of this stuff, like we need a conversation ahead of time. And this is the issue that we're having at 10 Dalton or 8 Dalton. And this is what we're going to do for it. And is everybody on board with that? And how are we going to do this? And are we going to hire a roofing company? Or are we going to do this ourselves? Because I also don't want the people who are doing this for the town to be so taxed, because there's always another project that they're signing themselves up for that we're not. I don't want anyone to feel like they don't have enough time to do quality work, or if it's not up to snuff, let's not have people keep doing it. And I expressly don't want people using ladders and wood as staging if this is not a safe OSHA compliant way to be doing it, if we're not following all the other things. So, yeah, I'm a little scared. Bruce?
so what I got, if we're doing roofs, we gotta make sure we have harnesses, proper way to tie off, for one. For two, I hope there's more than one person. The last time I knew, it was only one person in facility maintenance working right now.
And does our insurance cover that?
And if there's only one person working, you can't work on a roof by yourself. I mean, I hear in the budgetary stuff, we talk about safety with the Center for All Seasons and the library having 2 people. Oh, hello, this is one of the most dangerous things if you have somebody working by themselves.
Well, and don't we
Doing
have
construction
that,
up
that
here.
person isn't that person's our safety officer, correct? Making sure that everybody's being safe.
So who is it who's doing the work? Is it Chris?
Yes. And I don't know, I don't know what the situation with the staging is. I just need to ask him some questions, and then I'm happy to relay that information. to you guys.
So A, ask the questions, B, make sure that we know what we're purchasing with town money. And that it's,
And was that, I another question too, is,
yeah,
was that staging priced at Hammond's, or was there a reason why?
I don't know.
so let's make sure if that's not done, that it's being done safely, properly, that our insurance covers our facilities maintenance person doing roofing, that we have the right amount of insurance covering that, because if someone falls off the roof and we're not OSHA compliant, we are 100% responsible. So I don't want anybody doing anything that they're not supposed to be doing. You don't want me monkeying up on a roof. All right, does anybody else have anything else on there?
Only question this is just an explanation. To MMA, we're paying roughly 16,000. Is that yearly or is that semi-annual or?
Semi-annual.
Semi-annual, okay. And that's the insurance on
Yeah.
all that the
that's what
town
I
has.
applied. Yeah.
Okay.
Insurance is gonna make us poor one of these days.
No, Lucas striping,
Yes.
they're done
They're
now.
done.
They did the end of the West Road
Yep.
and all that.
Yep.
Okay. Did anybody else have anything?
No.
Rick, anything else from you?
Oh, I'm good. And I just, and if I'd read a little more, I would have seen. It said, and I'm sorry.
Of what?
I said the things I asked for, if I'd read a little bit farther in it, it said, what it was, and I just didn't read it all the way.
Well, sometimes it's not super clear.
It was just in two different places and I. Okay.
If there's no further questions, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, Ricky,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses. But if you could get back to us, Anthony, with those, all of that. And I don't care if I've got to be the bad guy on that, but Melanie Joel is saying if these things are not in place, then we are not doing these projects. You can get mad at me. Okay. with that.
Stop, you gotta stop being the bad girl.
That damn safety. Well, sign me up for the safety officer. I'll have everybody harnessed in. All right, so next up, we have the town manager's report.
Just a couple of items. Christmas and New Year's fall on Saturday. So under our policy, because it falls on a holiday falls on Saturday, we typically take Friday off. But it also means that the transfer station is closed. And so what Ken has proposed is opening the transfer station on the following Monday for each of those holidays. Monday, December 27th, and Monday, January 3rd, from 11 to 7. So just want to make sure everyone's good with that.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Yep.
And then also, because we'll be closed on the 31st, which is when we usually close out our books for the year for the auditor. We're going to do that on the 30th instead. We have typically closed at noon because we can't have more money coming in if we're trying to close out the books. And we've allowed ourselves a little leeway because if we need to contact Trio and they're busy, it may take a little while to get through with them. So we typically close at noon, and so I'm proposing that we stay open until 1:30 p.m. that day on the 30th. And of course, we'll publicize it just to let folks know that we have some business time to do it before. Does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Sure.
Why not just close it noon?
We could.
And then,
I was gonna say, do you need the extra hour and a half? I mean,
It just, Nick says typically it takes a couple of hours to close. And so we just allow ourselves a little bit of cushion in case we have to contact Trio. It's just being mindful that if the public needed in here, that we'd be open.
And 1:30 is sort of
Yeah.
after lunch, so people who need to come at lunchtime. would be able to
yeah,
come.
Yeah.
we've always closed at noon time though for that to give and we publicize it and say it gives the staff time to close out the books. for
If
the
we
year.
could,
Either way, it's fine.
yeah, okay. All right. Similarly, we usually do a last warrant of the year. You guys may remember we did a special meeting last year to do the final warrant of the year. But Nick thinks that we can go ahead and just have that as part of the December 21st meeting. But we usually get the warrant, we usually try to get the package to you the Thursday before a Tuesday meeting. And what he's proposed, and we would still do that, but with the warrant, we would wait until after the mail comes on the 20th. Do the warrant, then email it to you guys, have it ready for you for your meeting the next night, print it out. So do we think that would be agreeable to everyone? That way we don't have to have a special meeting to do the final warrant of the year.
And we don't think there'll be anything in the final
No, he was very comfortable with
9
sort
days
of-
that comes up.
Yeah, because a lot of those days are also going to be holidays,
Mm-hmm.
so.
Yeah.
That, those are 2 slowest days of the year because of the holiday season.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that as long as we don't leave anything hanging and then we're coming back for a meeting on the 31st.
No.
I gotta open up my invoices.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
So I could go home and do all my invoices for you.
Oh, no, if they're not in within 30 days, you're not getting paid. That's policy.
Well, yeah, it wouldn't be 30 days, but
So,
even if we got into January, it would be 30 days, but I think you want them on this year's budget.
we're gonna have the staff Christmas party in this room, a little luncheon, on December the 16th. You guys are all invited if you'd like to come. We're gonna do that from 11 to 1. Would it be allowable for us to just close the office so we're not having to get up from our gathering to, and of course we publicize that, put it on the marquee and on the front door, publicize it ahead of time.
Yeah, I'm all right with
I'm like,
that. Oh, yeah.
I
Miss-
can't come.
And then lastly, anything else we need to add to the whiteboard over here?
And the whiteboard is priority items.
Yes, so things don't slip through the cracks. or-
Melanie asked you to add something a week or so ago, and I don't remember what it was now.
I mean, that's why we want to go on the whiteboard of stuff we don't want to forget to get back to.
Yeah.
Right.
You said something the other day, and you said, let's put this on the whiteboard.
Right. Does anybody remember what it was?
You said that at the budget workshop?
I think it might.
Yeah, I think it was.
Mhm.
Oh,
Bruce, will you go back and watch that video? Since you weren't there, it'd be.
I haven't watched it yet. I
It'd be
gotta-
dual purpose for you.
That's my homework, yeah.
and when is our next one? Are we not doing anything until January?
For the budget?
Because we didn't get through the whole budget meeting.
No, it was
Yeah,
it
but
was
the-
January, the Wednesday, first Wednesday after.
Yeah, Wednesday,
January
5 p.m. January the 5th.
Okay. so
And the things that,
You're still off on Wednesday, right?
Yes.
That's why we picked Wednesday.
the things that we
Thank
haven't
you.
gotten to, Melanie, were pretty minor. It was the capital reserves. It was Public Works, and the Public Works Department's flat. It was social services and revenues. So those are easier lists than the others. And we're going to be working on the recreation budget tomorrow.
I'd like to see the public access to lakes on the whiteboard. I mean, I know that the Lakes Committee, there's a subcommittee, we're supposedly looking at that, but
Yeah.
it just
Mhm.
seems like that's something that needs to, I would like to see that stay in our minds.
Otherwise, I'm done with my report.
And I do, I mean, I don't mean to be being a hard ass, but sorry, I just said that right in public, but I want us to have a list. I want the select board in the loop with what is going on at all of the facilities in town, what we have for projects, what the plans are, what's recommended. We're being left out of that loop completely. So I didn't even realize there was an issue with the roof at the Dalton properties, and still stuff starts cropping up.
Yeah.
And these are those things that can't be. We cannot be blindsided by anybody in town knowing something we don't know.
Yeah, I thought it was included in the budget from this year.
There was talk about replacing the roof, but I didn't think we were gonna be doing it in-house.
But it was last year, it was supposed to have been done. He did half of it last year, he's gonna do the other half this year, I thought.
Could be.
Seeing Well, I guess probably I need to consult with you guys more about what we should be doing in-house versus what we should be contracting. Because I don't have a good feel for that.
I mean, that roof is a very important part of the building, and that's a lot of liability for a town to take on, because an insurance company could come in and say, if you have a damage caused from the roof, your insurance company can come in and say, sorry, you guys installed that. We're not
Right,
paying
well,
for
they
it."
could say they're not gonna cover it.
That, I mean, that's something, you know, there's certain things you contract out because they're contractors, they're insured for it, they're responsible for it.
Yeah,
That it's just, I'm not saying it to drum more work, because God knows I'm way too busy and a lot of other contractors have, but there's reason why this contract is, and there's reason why there's.
well, and I want to make sure that the warranty on whatever we do on the roof isn't compromised if it's, I mean, I'm going with a contractor for my roof because I was like, I want to make sure that there's no questions about the warranty. I could have had my brother-in-law throw himself up there and throw some new shingles up, but I also want to be sure that it's done right. And if I have any sort of a claim against it, that I'm covered because I've done it the way that I should have done it. So I just want to, I want everybody to be safe. I want us in the loop on what's happening when. I don't always respond to all of the emails, but I like the feed of information because then we do have an idea of what's going on. But, yeah. So let's make sure our safety officers being safe. And how are we doing with that? Are we doing all the little checklists? Is that all working out pretty well?
Yes, so one of the emails I recently sent out is we did earn a 7.5% reduction in our workers' comp insurance as a result of participating in the MMA's safety incentive program.
Yep, I did see that. Perfect. Does anybody else have anything else? All right, seeing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So be it.
Woo, everybody's like, all those in favor? Rick,
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Bruce? Just kidding. But it's gonna be an open seat on the board. Me too. All right. Good night, everyone.